So, let's talk about the New Deal. It was messy, it was controversial, and it absolutely changed America forever. We're talking about a total economic collapse, a president who was basically willing to try anything, and this alphabet soup of new laws that completely rewired the whole country. Let's get into it. First, just look at this number, 25%. Now, I want you to picture four of your closest friends. Got it? Okay, now imagine one of them just loses their job tomorrow. That wasn't some thought experiment. No, that was the actual unemployment rate in 1933. It was the crisis that set the stage for a change so massive, America would never be the same again. So, if there's one thing you need to understand about the New Deal, it's this. It completely flipped the script on what the government was supposed to do. You see, it went from being kind of like a distant referee, just watching the game, to being the star quarterback, on the field, calling the plays. And that shift, it was absolutely monumental. To really get why this happened, you have to understand the Great Depression. And I mean, really understand it. This wasn't just a bad quarter or a recession. This was a total system meltdown. The stock market had evaporated, banks were locking their doors, and the old way of thinking had just failed, utterly. You see, before the crash, the whole philosophy was something called laissez-faire. It's a French term, basically means hands off. The government just stays out of the way. But when the economy imploded, a hands-off approach meant there was no safety net. None. Nothing to catch the millions and millions of people who were falling. And the human cost was just staggering. You had these shanty towns, they called them Hoovervilles, popping up everywhere. People were desperate. The whole country was right on the edge. And then, in walks Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. And he didn't have some grand, rigid plan. His philosophy was actually incredibly simple. Try something. And if that works, cool, do more of it. If it doesn't work, admit it and try something else. And this famous try anything approach, well, it unleashed this flood of new government agencies, famously known as the alphabet soup. Okay, now all that chaos, all those new agencies, it can actually be pretty easy to understand. It all boils down to three simple goals. The three R's. First, relief. Stop the bleeding, give people immediate help. Second, recovery. Let's get the economic engine started again. And third, reform. Let's rewrite the rules so that this can never, ever happen again. So let's start with relief. A perfect example is the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. This program put 3 million young men to work. They lived in camps, and they got paid to do things like build our national parks and plant literally billions of trees. It was a lifeline for those guys and their families, and, as it turns out, an amazing gift to the environment. Then there was the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. This one was a giant. It's responsible for so much of the stuff we still use today. Roads, schools, dams, airports. But here's the really wild part. It also hired artists to paint murals, musicians to give free concerts, and writers to document American life. It was this bold, incredible statement that a country's culture, its soul, is just as important as its concrete. All right, on to recovery. In this one, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, or AAA, this one was weird and controversial. See, farm prices had totally collapsed, so the government came up with this radical idea. They paid farmers not to farm. I know, it sounds completely backwards, right? But the goal was to get rid of the massive surpluses, push prices back up, and save the entire agricultural economy. And this brings us to the third R, reform. And boy, was this a big one. The FDIC. You have to understand, before this, if your bank failed, your life savings just vanished. Poof, gone. This caused these terrifying bank runs where everyone would panic and pull their money out. The FDIC changed everything with one simple promise. The federal government guarantees your money is safe. And almost overnight, it restored faith in the entire system. But of all the reforms, of all the new programs, one stands head and shoulders above the rest. It wasn't just a new law. It was a completely new chapter in the American story. It fundamentally rewrote the agreement between the government and its people. Social Security, it is almost impossible for us to imagine America without it. But before 1935, the whole idea of retirement was basically a fantasy for rich people. For almost everyone else, you just worked until you physically couldn't anymore. And then you hoped your kids would take care of you. Social Security created, for the very first time, a federal safety net. It was a radical idea that completely transformed old age in America. And here's where you see FDR's political genius. He designed the whole thing to be untouchable. He knew that the second that Americans started paying into the system, and more importantly, started getting those checks in the mail, that was it. No future politician would ever dare to take it away. And you know what? He was 100% right. But let's be really clear here. The New Deal was not universally loved, not by a long shot. The arguments against it were fierce, and honestly, they're the same arguments about the role of government that we're still having right now. This isn't ancient history. It's a live debate. The critics really hammered on two main points. First, they argued that for all the spending and all the programs, the New Deal didn't actually end the Great Depression. And they had a point. Unemployment was still painfully high right up until the massive spending for World War II kicked in. The second big critique was that it was a massive government overreach, a power grab. And the prime exhibit for that was when FDR, furious that the Supreme Court was striking down his laws, actually tried to stack the court with a bunch of new, friendly justices.
So, a 90-year-old political fight. Why should you care? Well, because whether you know it or not, you're living in the world the New Deal built. Its legacy is all around us. It's in our politics, our expectations. It's even in our concrete.
The biggest legacy of all is probably this, our basic expectation of what the government should do. When a huge crisis hits, like the 2008 financial meltdown or the 2020 pandemic, what do? We automatically look to the government to step in and do something. That instinct, that started with the New Deal. It also proved something really important, that a democracy could face total collapse and not turn to the extremism that was taking over Europe at the time. A powerful message then and now.
And then there's the physical stuff. I mean, the actual bridges you drive over, the dams that power cities, the parks you walk your dog in. So much of that was built back in the 30s by agencies like the WPA. A huge amount of the country is still running on hardware that's almost a century old.
But here's the catch. That 90-year-old bridge is, well, it's 90 years old. It's starting to crumble. We inherited this incredible gift from a previous generation, but it came with a price tag. And for us, today, the bill is coming due. So the question is a simple one, but it's not easy. Who pays to fix it now? And all of this leaves us with a big central question that we are still fighting about today. Did the New Deal save American capitalism from itself? Or did it open a Pandora's box of government spending and intervention that we can't figure out how to close? I don't know the answer, but one thing is for sure. Nearly a century later, we're all still living in the house that FDR built.